they've been betrayed by everyone they've ever met in the past.
How many times have I told you I don't want to look at you?
Whenever girls think of escaping or approaching police, they're warned that the police here are in their pocket, and they believe that because the authorities in their home countries are usually corrupt. That be Eastern Europe, Africa. So they have controlled at every step of the way. They're raped and beaten into submission so that they'll perform as the traffickers want them to perform.
Go and sleep with this man now, before I give you another pain to think about. Go, now! He's waiting!
They're very traumatised, they're very frightened of being re-trafficked. They don't know who to trust and who not to trust. Some of them don't even know which country they're in. They've often been threatened that if they do try to escape, they'll go to prison for 20 years, that kind of thing. And the shame at the sexual abuse, at what they've had to do sexually, often prevents them from talking about that. So they will make something up that isn't true out of panic. And later that will come back, that will come up, because at a later stage they have to give a more substantive interview, and the two stories won't necessarily tie up. And in court that can be used against them as evidence that their whole story isn't true. So our role would be to write a report, and in some cases to act as a witness in court, to say this woman has been the victim of trauma, she has been sexually abused and repeatedly abused, and her story is true.
Back home, I had problems with my family. My mom had found out I'm a lesbian. They had thrown me out of the house. We left Uganda, and from France, we took a ship to London. The first 2 weeks, everything was normal, everything was okay. Then the third week, that's when everything changed. The lady called me in her room, and she told me there was a man there. I'm supposed to sleep with him. At first I refused. I pleaded with her, but she never felt sorry for me. She threatened me that in case I leave the house, police will arrest me and take me back to my country, of which as I wasn't safe there, so I was scared I couldn't escape. Then, so that went on and on and on.
The biggest tragedy, I think, for me personally is, through all the girls we've supported throughout this, is that they will ask their so-called clients for help. Sometimes it's the only word they know in English. And they're just dismissed.
He is waiting. He paid already. You do this one now.
I can't. It's too painful. I need to go to the hospital. I am not making this up.
No hospital, no. Do this one now, and then you can take a rest. Eh? We can't go to hospital.
I need medical help now.
Do you want that I lock you up and starve you like a dog? Eh? Go and sleep with this man now, before I give you another pain to think about. Go, now! He's waiting!
Some would use condoms, others wouldn't. I developed a pain in my down here. I would sleep with clients with a pain, and I would feel so much pain.
You have another one in half an hour. Go and get a shower and you'll be okay.
I took paracetamol. As I was taking it, she came in with a man. She told me to go and sleep with him. I told her I couldn't because the pain was too much.
We took you to the hospital. What are you complaining about now?
You work me so hard. I'm so tired. All the time I'm tired.
Work is tiring. Rent needs to be paid. Get into your room and wait for the next customer.
No, I'm not waiting anymore. I am tired of waiting. No more waiting.
Come back here. Come back.
I ran out She came running after me. I met a man.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Do you know where the police station is?
I'm sorry, I'm not from around there.
Literally, it could be happening next door to you. That's the problem. It's not what people see as, a sauna, massage and all that. It's happening in those places too. More and more often, it's happening in residential streets. In fact, more common in residential streets.
I think she went back because I never saw her again. I kept walking, taking different routes. I kept walking and walking. I did not ask anyone where the police station was again. So I kept walking. I walked like for 3 hours till when I reached a police station. They took me to hospital. I wasn't pregnant. The Salvation Army picked me up from the police station. They took me for interviews and they brought me here about midnight. That was on 27th of April.
Victims come to us in all kinds of different ways, depending on where they are, who's referred them. But generally speaking, we will conduct an initial assessment by telephone to establish what their needs are. And then following that assessment, following making the arrangement with the accommodation, the appropriate accommodation for the victim, then we'll arrange transport for them. And we do that through a network of volunteers. So we have Salvation Army personnel all over the country who are ready and able to provide that transport. This is one of the really good things about the contract, in that we're able to begin to show the victim some care, begin the process of giving them a sense of value, that somebody cares about them enough to take them on this journey. And so we will then transport them to the safe house and show them that we're bothered.
So I've been here since that time. They got me a solicitor. I'm seeking asylum here. They give me accommodation. They pay me £50 every week.
The main thing is to reassure them of their safety, that they are in a safe place, and that we will support them through whatever process. Healthcare has got to be a priority, you know. Getting sexual health checks is a big thing. GP registration, supporting them to attend those appointments, getting them legal advice if you know, they're from outside the EU, and supporting them through the whole asylum process.
The next stage of the work is we would offer women one-to-one therapy, and the therapist goes into the hostel, and if a woman wanted that, she would have her appointment slot and she would have her weekly session. Sometimes, not very frequently, but a woman is very ill, has been pushed over into a psychosis as a result of all that she's lived through. And in that case, we'd be working very closely with the hostel staff to enable a woman to get the help that she needs. So there have been women who have had to be hospitalised within the first days of arriving, who might have been hallucinating or having very serious symptoms. So in those cases, women would move out of the hostel into a hospital to get specialised psychiatric care. But for the women who remain in the hostel, which is nearly all of them, we'd offer to work with them weekly. And one of the challenges is that women stay in the hostel for a short period now. In those cases, we would offer to women to come here. That's why we have these rooms in this building in King's Cross, where women who've moved on from the hostel can carry on with the work, because it is long-term work. Sometimes it's a lifetime from infancy of abuse, and you can't recover from that in a few weeks. So we would encourage women to engage for as long as they're able to. Sometimes what interrupts that is that women are sent to Leeds or Land's End or far away, in those cases, we research what was available locally and try to set something up for women who want it, where they're moved on to. But it is much better if you can do the work, carry on doing the work with the same therapist who was with you when you first arrived.
The Salvation Army provides the support for the 45-day recovery and reflection period. And the support we provide is the government's way of meeting its obligations to the European Convention Against Trafficking. And under that convention, they're obliged to provide support for a minimum of 30 days. There are some countries where they support them for 90 days. But here in the UK, we support them for 45 days. I think, to be frank, it is more like a triage level of support where we're helping the victim to recover their status quo, helping them to think about their options for the future, receive the immediate support and advice that they need, whether that's medical services or legal advice, immigration advice, and then begin to talk to them about the options for when they leave the service after the 45 days or when they get their decision.
One of the challenges is that women are only allowed to stay for such a short period in the hostel. And if you think how much trauma they have experienced, and some of them don't even know what country they're in, it's pitifully short. It's not long enough for them to get anywhere near being well enough, I think, for another change and getting used to more people. And at one time when we started this work, they were allowed to stay at the hostel for much longer. And I think, again, that would be a much more humane way of working with the women, to give them longer to recover. And in the end, it would be a saving because they would use fewer services afterwards. But if they have to keep making a fresh start and get used to a new place and new people, it will take longer for them to recover. I think it's very cruel that they're only allowed to stay there for such a short period.
When I was young, about 12 years old, there was war. My dad was killed. And then I had to flee with my mom and my sister. I was walking along the street one day close to a restaurant. I met this man. He said hello to me. Every day we see there, we talk. I told him everything. He felt for me. I thought he was so kind, and gradually I started trusting him. Later on, he said he likes me, he wants to go out with me, if I would want to stay with him. And at that moment, I didn't really think, because I felt that was really good for me to have a place, to have someone that I can just trust, to have something to just hold on to, because I had nothing. Everything I have is destroyed in the north. Where we were then, I knew nobody, so I needed something. I needed somebody to hold on to, and I met this man that was so kind to me. So I felt it's the right thing to do. And I was living with this man. And then he started sleeping with me and making me do bad things. Then later on, he started making me to sleep. He would bring other men, he would make them to sleep with me. The reason why I didn't leave, because I felt, okay, this man wants to help me to travel out. I'll have a better place. Maybe when I'm gone, I will stay away from him. But I don't really know how things would be. I was afraid and I was confused. I wanted to maybe go back and stay with my mother, but my mom was so sick and she was so down. There's no way she cannot take care of me.
When women have been, or anybody has been repeatedly abused, they will begin to believe that they deserve that it's something about them that has invited the abuse and that they don't deserve better. And so the therapist would take a woman back to what made her vulnerable in the very first place, which is very often something that happened in childhood, like the loss of a family to keep her safe. And through going back historically to when the troubles began, the trouble in her life began, it enables a woman to believe that she didn't deserve it then, and she hasn't. She's got caught up in a chain of events that started many, many years ago, and that everything that has ensued that's been really bad, including the trafficking, including the forced sex work and all the other things that she might have had to do, weren't her fault. It was a chain of events, and that she wasn't responsible for the initiation of that. And I think when a woman can see that, sometimes women for the first time actually believe that they deserve a good life, they are a good person and they deserve a good life. So Our mission statement is to enable women to live safely and with dignity, and it's about a woman finding her dignity, because if a woman doesn't find that, she'll be very vulnerable to exploitation again. So that takes a lot of doing. It takes a long period. It takes the time that it takes. It can take years. And we do work in some cases with women over a period of years. And our work is done when a woman can feel that she didn't deserve any of this and that she is a good person and she's entitled to live safely and with the dignity that we all deserve.
She said, well, you're going to travel. You'll have a better life. I'm going to come to, he said, England. He took me to the airport, but I came here all alone. A man came to pick me up, and then he took me to his house. I came to live with other people. I was working for them in the house. I would clean the house, I would scrub the house, I would wash the toilet.
You're in my way. How many times have I told you I don't want to look at you?
Sorry.
Clean at night so I don't have to see you.
I use the brush because if I use the hoover, it will disturb them when they're sleeping. One day she came into the room and she saw me crying and she started shouting that she would beat me. She said, I'm not grateful that I'm having food to eat, that she don't know what I'm crying for. I said to myself that I have to leave this house, whatever will happen. Then one day, I just took my bag. And then I opened the door, nobody knew. That was how I ran away.
Excuse me, are you lost?
Yes. I had to run away. I have nowhere to go. I don't know what to do.
Come with me. My name is Kaya. What is yours?
Esther.
Don't worry, I won't do anything bad to you, eh? Come on, let's get you some food.
She just followed her good heart and she took me to her house. I know she doesn't know me, that she's also afraid of taking me in. She took me to church where women were having meeting in their church. And she wanted to help me, and then she talked to them about me, that please, she need help for me. And that was where one woman said she knows somebody that can just offer me a place to stay for some time before I sort myself out. But all the people I've stayed with, they are scared of keeping me for long because when they get to know that I don't have papers, they will want me to leave because they are scared. Like, give me money, £10, £20 to buy my other things that I need. That's how I kept living from people to people. And then there was this woman that offered to help me. She kept me in her house. While I was in her house, her husband slept with me.
You okay?
He was nice to me, the man. He was, for a long time, I've not felt loved by anybody because I've gone through a lot.
Do you have a condom?
Always like I live my life just like a slave to people. So when this man was nice to me, I was like a bit close to him. I never wished that anything like that should happen. I was searching through the internet and I saw a name of Women Good Counsel for Women.
So the husband made you pregnant?
Yes.
Did you use force?
No.
But you don't want to keep the baby?
I can't. I have no way to care for a baby at the moment.
They asked me a lot of questions about myself. That was how they got to know about how I came to the country. They asked me to come back another day. But then when I went, because of the stress, I don't sleep. I was always crying. I was confused. Then later on, I had a miscarriage. When I went back to them, that was when they said,
"You've done the right thing. You were tricked to come here. You were trafficked. What we need is to get you to a safe house as soon as possible, I think."
What is going to happen to me? Are they going to send me home?
You've got at least 45 days in a safe house.
I can't go home. My life back home was worse than here.
Please, let's just concentrate on the safe house for now, okay? We'll worry about the Home Office a bit later.
The time it takes for them to get their status in the UK can vary, and it's a painful process because the border agency doesn't always believe their experiences, shall we say, call it your history. It's helpful if they get a positive decision in the trafficking claim. That can be helpful, but it doesn't necessarily speed up the asylum process. That varies greatly between the time they arrive in the UK and the duration of their stay in the UK preceding making an asylum claim. Some are held in captivity for years. Some of them escaped and have lived below the radar. That brings its own problems. But it can vary widely about how soon they get their status.
What I wish is that when women have escaped and met the police and been brought to the safe house and met with us, that we would be able to write some kind of report, document, authenticating what they have lived through, and that would be sufficient for them to bypass the UK Border Agency and the British legal system having to go to court, because that's another trauma. Women who have been sexually abused are terrified that they won't be believed. And then they go to court and they are frequently not believed in court in a public place. And that in itself is very humiliating and it compounds the trauma. So I wish that they could bypass that and just have asylum on the basis of a psychologist's report on what they've lived through. And very frequently, that is the place that you arrive at in the end, but women have been put through a lot en route to getting there. So one of the women I worked with, she'd had 2 babies, the father of whom was the trafficker, and she escaped from the hospital when the second baby was newly born. And she wasn't believed and ended up being arrested on passport offences and served 6 months of she was sentenced to a year, of which she served 6 months in prison. She was not believed then by the asylum court, and only at an appeal where I was able to go as a witness for her was she finally awarded asylum, because the judge asked me why I should be believed when previous courts, criminal court and immigration courts and the UK Border Agency didn't believe her. And I just said simply, anybody can make up a story, but you can't pretend to be afraid, because I had been with that woman when she was absolutely terrified of being sent back. And she was, at that stage, she was granted asylum. But what a waste of public resources, what a waste of funding, and how inhumane to put somebody through prison, separation from her babies, court hearing after court hearing to arrive at that point. I think it's a very inhumane system. I think it's cruel to women to make them take on the British legal system at a time in their lives when they are so vulnerable and so frightened. So that's what I wish. I think we should have a system where they can just have have a thorough assessment with a psychologist and have a report that enables them to bypass that.
Then if they do get their legal status, we help them to access, maybe privately rented accommodation, because we're all well aware now that in the UK, social housing's at a premium, so they don't always qualify for either. So we support them to access that, and it might be approaching a charity for deposits, rent deposits and such like. We will take them to Department of Work and Pensions and get a national insurance number for them. Also, while they're here, we're trying to prepare them for the future where possible, get them some voluntary work with the agreement of the border agency, because they can't just go out and get work. So we're preparing them for the future while awaiting decisions.
For the first time, I felt free in my life, free that I could eat what I feel like eating or what somebody wants me to eat. And the people here, the staffs, they are so nice to me.
We have committed volunteers that will come in and mentor the women and, help them rebuild their lives and build their aspirations for the future, and trying to, while they never forget what's happened in the past, they can change their futures. And it's building that into them every single day, reassuring them that there is a brighter future out there for them and they are safe now and they can go forward. We've had a great measure of success with that. Lots of our women have gone on to lead very productive lives.
I think the danger with women who we just work with for a very short period is that they will be very vulnerable to re-trafficking. And some of these women have a developmental difficulty. That's what has made them vulnerable in the first instance to traffickers. So to give you an example, one of the first women I worked with didn't believe the doctor who told her that she was HIV positive, but believed a trafficker who asked if she'd like to go to Disneyland, because she had very poor judgment of who was her friend and who wanted to hurt her. And that's very common with these women. And if we can work with them long enough, hopefully we can enable them to have a better judgment. And one of the risks of working over a very short period, just a few sessions, is that women are still very poor at judging who wants to hurt them. And we have worked with women who we know have been re-trafficked. And some women are very afraid of that legal system, of taking on the courts, and they will disappear from view. They are lost to us because they're very frightened of what they have to go through. So some of the women just disappear into the black economy and homelessness, and we don't know what becomes of them.
All I wanted in my life is to be in a place where I can be safe, where I can feel safe, where people can even show me that I'm a human being that would love me, but not to treat me like a slave or to treat me because I don't have papers. If I stay with people, they later on change to me, but here, they love me so much, they care about me so much, and I feel very much at home here.
I'm always amazed at the strength that the individuals find within themselves to get on with that journey, to find the strength to tell their story, for example, to find a job, to get out there, to mix, to become sociable, to start to trust people, something that's really difficult if you've been tricked and threatened by people who you thought you could be trusted, you could trust. But it is a long journey. There's no two ways about that. And victims do need other people around them and other agencies and frankly, friends who will support them on that road to recovery.